With the costs of insulin skyrocketing, many people are going back to pre-mixed insulin in their effort to get good glycemic control. In this video, I'm going to discuss what pre-mixed insulin is, how it works, and what are some of the benefits of using it. If you're new to me, I'm Dr. Dwayne Wood. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. And here on my channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life, avoid complications, live the life you've always wanted, and go to the next level. This is Diabetes Awareness Month. Every November, we go about educating the public, dispelling any myths that may be out there, and trying to convince people that they can really prevent the progression to diabetes. And if they're living with diabetes, they can have a healthy, fulfilling life and minimize the complications. That's what I've been doing here for the entire month, and we are coming close to the end. We're not there yet. If you've missed some of our shows, you got to go back and look at those. They are in a playlist that I've created on the channel, and it's called Diabetes 101 Series, the Diabetes 101 Series. I guess I should put a "the" in front of it. But anyway, Diabetes 101, you can find it there. All the videos that I've done so far for this month are in that playlist. Go back and watch those and then catch up with us, right? After you've listened to this, after you've viewed this, go back and catch up on some of those other ones. If you know people who have diabetes, go ahead and share it with them. Let them know what we're doing. Let them know that all this resource is out there, and we'll talk a little bit more in the end of the show about some of those resources. But I've been walking through Diabetes 101, and wow, so many different things that we've talked about, right? They're there. We are in the midst of treatment, and actually to the end of treatment. I've gone through and talked about non-prescription treatment for diabetes, talked about prescription treatment for diabetes, and walked through the different forms, right? So oral medications. We've talked about non-insulin injectables. We are in the middle of talking about insulin. And we've done two shows already about it. And this is the third one that tonight we're talking specifically about pre-mixed insulin, what it is, why we use it, how to use it, and so forth. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's jump over there. So pre-mixed insulin, what is it? What is pre-mixed insulin and how do you use it? As you heard me say at the top of the show, that pre-mixed insulin, let me hop back over to this screen. Pre-mixed insulin is, we used this before, right? Some of you who are out there, you may remember, if you've been diabetic for a while, this is what we had, right? In fact, we had them separated. And you may recall people in the past saying they had to mix the insulin. They would draw one up, then they would draw the other one up, and then they would inject the insulin, right? So they were using syringes at that time. So pre-mixed insulin came about as a combination of those two things they were drawing up. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. But just so you get an idea, this is not, the insulins that we're using are not new insulins. They've been around, right? We just have newer insulins, I was going to say versions, but they're not really versions. They are newer insulins that we currently use. But as the price has gone up on many of those insulins, people are now going back to the old insulin. And let me say this to everybody, right? I'm going to say it for everybody to hear. They work. Woo! Right? They work. Now, everybody's going to talk about the benefits of newer insulins, and I get it, right? But if you can't afford the newer insulins, then guess what? This is what we have. So, and anyway, that's enough said, right? So we're not going to go down that road. But I want you to know that they work, okay? It's kind of, I always tell the story of my, I had a whole old VW Bug, that red car, right? The little dome shaped car. They got different colors now. I think are they yellow? Yeah, yellow and blue, or anyway, they got a little flower. Mine didn't have a flower. And a friend of mine, right, who you may be watching, when he was leaving college, I gave it to us basically, right? I think, did we pay $100 or something? I don't remember. But anyway, so he gave us the car. And the car, it was not pretty, right? And it had a lot of stuff wrong with it. But that thing drove and it drove and it drove and it took us to classes, took us to work, took us back to home, right? So it worked. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. And I sometimes will talk to people about these insulins in that way, that they are not, we have things that work better, things that are more fancy, things that are more newer. But the old stuff still works. Okay. Did I beat that horse to death? Yes, I did. Okay. So let's go back. So let's go back to this. So what is pre-mixed insulin and how do you use it? How do you use it? Right. So let's walk through first of all and talk about this little slide. So we've talked about basal bolus, and you guys should understand that now. If you don't, go back and watch that show. Basal bolus insulin. So basal insulin is what we take that helps keep our blood sugars relatively normal overnight, right, when we're not eating. And bolus insulin is what we take when we do eat, right? So those are the two types of insulin. And then, of course, the mixed insulin or pre-mixed is what we're going to be talking about tonight. And do you remember I introduced Christy and Sam? Sam and Christy. So Sam was diagnosed when he was 15. Christy was diagnosed when she was 35. Sam is a type 1. Christy is a type 2. And tonight on this show, I want to introduce you to someone else. This is David. So David is a type 1 diabetic. He was diagnosed when he was age 5. He is currently on basal insulin, right? We talked about basal bolus. He's on basal insulin at night and then bolus insulin. And you'll see some numbers there. Don't worry about those right now. Just know that he is on some bolus insulin. And when we talk about the insulin, it was really in this form, right? So we took some basal insulin that helped manage blood sugars overnight. And then the boluses were the insulins that we did for the mealtime. And so David is on that type of regimen, right? He's on that type of regimen. And so there's David, there's Christy, and there is Sam. Those are our guys. And these are the blood sugars that they all have, right? Magically. So these are people that we are going to use as examples, right? So they all have the same blood sugars. They all have the same A1C is 8.5. So if you average all those numbers on the screen together, that A1C, it comes out to about 186, roughly there. If you're out there, you got a calculator, you can check me on that. Roughly there. And then if you convert the A1C to, or convert the average blood sugar to an A1C, it comes out, the estimated is about an 8.2%, which is not at goal, right? Because our goal is for our A1C to be 6.5. And our goal for our blood sugars, really depending on the time, right? We said in the morning, we want our blood sugars to be between 100 and 120. And prior to a meal, we want it to be less than 140. So those are the parameters that we're using. And if you look at all of these, most of them are not in that parameter. Of course, there's that 92 there, and then the 70. There's 100 on the screen if you can't see it. But most of them are higher than that, 150 or higher. There's a 122 I see on Monday at lunchtime is 122. Okay. So when we talk about basal bolus, what we would do is we would go through and we would give a basal. That's the green that you see there at the end of the day. That's the one that we're going to take that's going to help us to control blood sugars overnight when we're not eating. And then for each of the meals, we're going to take some insulin, the bolus, that is going to help control the blood sugar that comes from the food that we're just about to eat. And that's what's called basal bolus, the basal bolus method. And you may hear people say that, and that's essentially what it means. Now, if you are on a particular type of insulin, remember, I'm just using the words basal and bolus. But for basal, you can throw in whatever you're on, right? So you can do Lantus, Tresiba, Toujeo, Levemir, Basaglar, Semglee, any of those, right? Any of the ones that are basals. And boluses, then you would be able to put in there Novolog, Humalog, Limjev, Apidra, right? Lispro, a bunch of those. When we talk, and if that makes sense, right? So right now I'm not calling specific names, and it doesn't matter which one when we're talking about basal bolus, right? When I said it doesn't matter, they all are supposed to do the same thing. Now, if you look at the specific insulins, right? They've done studies and they've done, you know, when you talk to the folks who have those insulins, then some of those insulins last longer. For example, and I'm not going to give you the specific name and length, but the basal insulins are supposed to last on average about 24 hours, right? Because it's once a day. It's a once a day insulin. So about 24 hours, that insulin is supposed to be there. And it helps to manage the blood sugars, once again, when you're not eating, when you're sleeping, when you go between meals, right? You know, eat breakfast, between breakfast and lunch, the basal is supposed to be helping to manage the blood sugars, okay? So 24 hours. There are insulins in the basal group that have been shown to last longer, right? 36 hours, for example, right? So they last longer, but on average, 24 hours. The bolus insulins are supposed to start working in 15 minutes. They peak at about an hour and they're gone by 2 hours, right? And on average, that's what they do. Now, there are some insulins that are marketed now to work faster. They start working faster. And we're going to actually see some of those when we get over to talking about technology. All right. So enough said. That's the kind of a review of basal bolus. So for basals, we would take our basal insulin at night. And if you recall, we are adjusting the basal insulin based on the morning number. So if your number in the morning is high on 2 separate occasions, we go up on the basal and we keep going up every couple of days until the blood sugar comes down to where we want it to be fasting. And then for each of the meals, we're taking insulin for the meal. So breakfast, we take some insulin, right? And that controls the lunch blood sugar. And then lunch, we take some insulin and that controls the supper blood sugar. And then supper, we take some insulin based on the food that we're eating. And so in this case, with the basal bolus method, we take 4 shots, right? 4 shots, 1 long acting and then 3 short acting if we're eating 3 meals. Now, if we're eating more than 3 meals, let me hasten to say that if you're eating more than 3 meals, then you are taking more than 3 shots. Okay. Check, of course, with your healthcare provider. Let me say that. Let me put that again. Check with your healthcare provider, right? I got to say that. But these methods should work for you as you and your treating physician are working through, okay, how do we do this? This is a good method to use. Okay, so that's what we would do with the basal bolus method. Well, if we're doing the pre-mixed insulin, we're going to change that up a little bit, okay? Because the pre-mixed insulin, it's mixed, right? So it has a longer acting insulin and a shorter acting insulin together. Longer and a shorter acting insulin together. Now, the reason I'm saying longer and shorter, because we can get into the details of whether it's NPH or NPH and regular, or NPH and Humalog, NPH and Novolog, right? So we can get into all those different things. But suffice it to say that the combination has a longer acting insulin and a shorter acting insulin in it. So rather than having to take the shot for the basal and then the shot for the bolus, they're both combined, right? There are different types of insulin in there. They're combined with a longer acting one and a shorter acting one in one medication. And when you inject it, you're getting both of them at the same time. So that's what pre-mixed is, right? And so pre-mixed, you may also remember from the past, people used to talk about the clear insulin and the cloudy insulin, right? The clear and the cloudy. And the clear and the cloudy came from the fact that there were 2 types of insulins, right? The NPH was cloudy and the regular back in those days was clear. now we have some other combinations, right? So NPH was cloudy, and you'll see that there on the screen. One is clear, right? Obviously, and the other one is cloudy. Now that came with some consequences, right? Because when you look at the bottle, and if you look at the little diagram that's on the side, you'll see that they didn't mix well. Like they didn't stay mixed together. So when you looked at the bottle, the cloudy and the clear was separated. So before you use it, you have to roll it, right? So we're not talking about shaking it up, right? So we should roll it so that they mix together before you draw it up, right? So the process for using it is you take it out, you roll it so that it's mixed, then you draw up your dose, and then you wipe it off with alcohol, all the things that you would normally do, and then you would inject it. So when you inject it, you're getting both of them at the same time. Both of them at the same time. So roll it, inject at the same time. Now, I keep saying draw up, right? So draw up makes you think that you're drawing it up in a syringe. But let me hasten to say that they come as a pen as well. They come as a pen as well. So I keep saying that because people have a better visual about the separation of the two when I say draw it up. But they come as a pen. And the same thing with the pen. When you get the pen, you would have to take the pen and you would roll it so that they get mixed. And then you would dial up your dose and then you would inject it. So what does that mean then for how we would take it, how we would administer it? What that means then is we don't have to take the insulins separately, right? Obviously. And the way that we usually take it is that if you recall on the previous slide, we were doing the basal once, and then we were doing boluses for each of the meals. In this case, we would take a dose of the pre-mixed insulin at breakfast, and that would last from breakfast, right, into lunch, and actually into the evening. And then we would take a dose at supper, and that would last overnight into the morning. So what does that do, right? So that now decreases the doses or the shots that we take from 4, that is basal plus 3 boluses, to 2, where we do 1 in breakfast and 1 at supper time. And the combination of those, because we have both of those insulins mixed together, then they give us the coverage that we need. Give us the coverage that we need. Now, let me hasten this. Let's talk a little bit about the benefits, and let's talk about some of the not so good things. Well, obviously, benefit is that you go from 4 shots to 2, right? I mean, that's obvious. So that people love that. Like, if I can decrease by 2 shots, that's decreased by 50%, right? Yeah. So that's good. And they can be less expensive than some of the other insulins, the basal boluses, right? So less expensive. In fact, currently, the least expensive insulin, if you're paying cash, the least expensive insulin I know is the pre-mixed insulin that they sell at Walmart, right? I'm not promoting it, but I mean, that's what it is. I think it's $25 a vial. For some of the for the others, and once again, but if you're doing pre-mix, you're only getting 1 insulin, right? And you just take it twice a day, based on this schedule that I'm giving. With the others, if you're paying cash, first you've got to buy 2 insulins, right? The basal and the bolus, and then I don't think you can get those for $25. Right, so cost and simplicity of use would be 2 big things. Oh, pros. And they work, right? They cost, they're simpler, they work. Boom. That sounds good to me, right? So why wouldn't we use them? Well, one of the reasons for thinking of using other things is, let's assume that we took our 2 doses for the day, right? And we're looking at our blood sugars and we realize, hey, wait a minute. The dose for the morning, I took it, but by lunch, my blood sugar is still higher than I want it to be. So what would I do? Well, I would increase the dose in the morning. But when I increase the dose in the morning, I can't just increase the one for the meal, right? Which is the short acting that's in there. So when I dial it up, when I increase the dose, I'm actually increasing the dose for both the short acting and the shorter acting and the longer acting one. So there's no way to increase them separately. When I was doing basal bolus, if my blood sugar in the morning was high, I could adjust that. And if I needed to adjust with the meals, I could adjust that independently. But with the pre-mix, they're together. So going up on the dose on one increases the dose of the other. Now, why is that the case? So if you look at the names for the pre-mixed insulin, right? Whatever the first name is, then it has some numbers behind it, right? There's 70-30, there's 50-50, there's 75-25. And the numbers tell us how much of the longer acting insulin is in it and how much of the shorter acting insulin is in it. So for instance, the 70-30 has 70% long acting insulin, longer, and 30% shorter. And when I say long and short, because I may forget to say longer and shorter, you guys please understand that's what I'm saying. Okay? I don't mean that this is a long acting insulin or a short acting insulin. It's longer and shorter, right? Because I know some of the technophytes out there will say, you said it was a long acting insulin. Well, no, I misspoke. Or I forgot to say short, or I forgot to add the ER to the end of the end of what I was saying. All right, does that make sense? Yes. All right. So when we look at the numbers, right? So 70-30 means that 70% of it is the longer acting insulin and 30% is the shorter acting insulin. When we look at the 75-25, that means that 75% of it is the longer and 25% is the shorter. When you look at 50-50, that means that 50% is the longer and 50% is the shorter. See how that is, right? So let's just, and so the shorter one is what is affecting the meal that I'm eating right now. The longer one is affecting, when I'm not eating. Like, so between breakfast and lunch, when I'm not eating, the longer one is affecting the blood sugar. So let's assume I needed more of the longer one, right? Because my blood sugar, by the time I got to lunch, was still high. And I say, okay, wait a minute. So let me dial it up, right? I'm going to take another 2 units. Well, let's make it easy. Let's say you're going to take 10 units because the math is better. So I say we're going to dial it up by 10 units. Well, 7 of those 10 units would go to the longer acting one, which I needed because that's why I'm going up. But 3 would go to the meal, which means that my potential for going low right after the meal is higher, right? Because I didn't need the extra for the meal. All I needed was the longer acting one, but I can't dial them up independently of each other, right? So that's one of the one of the drawbacks, that it doesn't allow for this type of fine adjustments that we get when we talk about using the basal bolus method, right? So the potential for going low is higher. It's not as easy to manage. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's pre-mixed insulin. There's some other things I'm going to say here in a minute, but this is a great place for us to jump over and do our amazing question wheel. All right, so amazing question wheel. You see it on the screen. If you've been here, you know what this is. If you're not, let me explain the rules. So you'll see some questions on the wheel, there on your screen. I'm going to spin the wheel, and whatever question it lands on, I'm going to answer. Right? And here are the rules for the answer. It has to be a short, well, not short. It has to be real, a real answer. It has to be concise. It has to be usable, right? So practical. So you can take it and say, okay, yeah, I got an answer for that question. The bigger rule is, hey, I've got to do it. I've got to give the answer in 45 seconds. Yes, 45 seconds. You're going to give that for 45 seconds, then I'm going to clip that out. I'm going to make a video of it. I'm going to post it on our social media platforms. And then I want you to go out and I want you to find it on whichever social media platform we put it. We're going to put it on all of ours, right? And our name, you can find us here right below my name. It says Dwayne Wood MD. So on all of our social media platforms, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. What did I say? Did I miss one? LinkedIn, right? All of those. Find it, and when you find it, you want to put in the comments hashtag I was there, hashtag I was there, right? So that we know that you're there. And we're still trying to figure out how we're gonna reward you guys for that hashtag I was there. So if you're out there and you have an idea of how we can say thank you for people who are putting hashtag I was there, drop me a line so that I know, right? It's a hashtag I was there, right there. All right, so let's hop back over to our question wheel. All right, so that's the plan. That's the plan, and that's how it works. So let's go ahead and let's spin the wheel, and let's see what question we get to. All right, round and round and round it goes. Where it stops, I don't know. I keep saying that. I gotta find a different thing to say, but I like that. I like it. Okay, let's see. What is it? Which is the least expensive glucose meter? Whoa, least expensive glucose meter. Okay, that one is unexpected. Okay, so let's see. Which is the least expensive glucose meter? Let me go over there. All right, so let's see. Let's get 45 seconds on the screen. 45 seconds. Least expensive glucose meter. Okay. Which is the least expensive glucose meter? Well, if you have insurance, it depends on what is covered by your insurance. But if you're paying cash, currently the least expensive is probably the Relion brand that is sold by Walmart. I don't remember the exact price for it, but it is probably the least expensive. You can also shop around because sometimes the store brand of whichever pharmacy you go to can be less expensive as well. All right, did I get it? Yep, I think I did. Let's get my hand claps. Woohoo! I did. I answered it. That's right, I did. I think I answered that. I had about 10 seconds left to go. Right. I wanted to say more. You guys see that, right? Every time I want to say more stuff, I say, no, I can't say anymore. Let me stop right there. Okay. All right. So that's our question, amazing question wheel. So once again, please go out and hashtag I was there, hashtag I was there. All right. So let's hop back up over here for a minute. So pre-mixed insulin, that's how it works. That's what it is. That's what some of the benefits are, some of the drawbacks of it. Pre-mixed insulin is a viable option for many people for several reasons, but the big reason is because of cost. And pre-mixed insulin works. So if you're having challenges with your medication, with the cost of your medication, talk to your provider about pre-mixed insulin. Okay? Now, they may decide, and you guys may decide that it is not the thing for you, and that's okay. That's okay, right? Because it's not for everybody. But there may be reasons and ways that you guys, you and your healthcare team, decide that this is what you're going to do. All right? Yeah. All right. So I am very excited that you guys are here, right? If you're here right now, go ahead and give me a thumbs up for this episode. If you're liking what I'm doing, give us a thumbs up on this and the other videos that are in that playlist that we've done this month. Like it, subscribe, go into your YouTube account, log in and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so that you can so that you will be notified when new things come up, when I put new videos, when I go live, and other, like I did Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving video, right? Hopefully you watched that, right? But that was just a pop-up. That wasn't something that was planned. Just decided I was going to do it. And so you get alerted when that happens. If you have not subscribed, if you don't have a YouTube account, go ahead and create one. It's free. And then log in and do the same thing, hit subscribe, and then hit the bell so that you get notified when I do put things up. And then let me pop over here. And if you go to my website, Dwayne Wood MD, DwayneWoodMD.com, and I'm going to pop it over here. It's going to show up with the question wheel thing, but that's okay. If you hop over here, I've got a free resource that I provided, made available to you, and it is called 7 Keys to Success. 7 Keys to Success. 7 Keys to Success. If you hit the button right there, then it comes up, and that's what it looks like. Look at that handsome fella, right? And it's steps successful leaders use to create the life they want. Learn how successful people create the life they want. Okay. And you go ahead, and that is made available for you for free. All you've got to do is head over to that website. Okay. So I am excited for what has happened this month so far. The playlist is there. We've got just a few more shows, right, to get to the end of the month. And there's going to be another resource that we're going to make available to you here in a few days. So keep an ear out for that. I'm so excited that you're here. Once again, this is Dr. Dwayne Wood. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. And here on the channel, I help and I educate, I encourage, I empower you to take charge of your life, your health, avoid complications, live a healthy, fulfilling life, going to the next level. I'll see you at the next episode. Good night.